The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Blaby again, everybody. Now below me there, you can see a motorway. That is the M69, and this parish spans the area that's both sides of that major road. The M69 runs from Leicester to Coventry, and if you drive along it, you'll be passing the parish of Huncote. Huncote, Hun's Cottage. Today in Blaby we're in the parish of Huncote, which centres around a small village to the west of the much bigger Narborough. It stands on the Thurleston Brook and features a watermill at its southernmost point. Huncote is primarily a residential village. A lot of its northern and eastern areas are defined by lots of modern 20th century housing. The central core is located in the south of the village. That's the oldest part, where Huncote benefits from several of its amenities, some of which wouldn't be out of place in a small town. These include a pub called the Red Lion, a post office, 2 general stores, 3 hairdressers, a takeaway, and 3 local parks. Huncote also has a woodyard and a residential care home for the elderly. There's also a leisure centre, which is considered to be one of the best in the county. It has a running track and a BMX club where the Huncote Hornets are based. North of the village is a pet rescue centre called Leicester Animal Aid. So in short, this one's got quite a lot for such a small place. Huncote is also known for being the village in which the actor Richard Armitage grew up. He's best known for his role as John Thornton in the TV programme North and South, and for his role as the Dwarf King and leader Thorin Oakenshield in Peter Jackson's film adaptation of The Hobbit. The latter brought him international recognition. And here's one for all the American viewers. If you possess the surname Honeycutt, or know someone who does, your ancestors come from this very village. Huncote is the etymological root of that surname. So, what are we waiting for? Let's go. The first port of call here in Huncote is an animal rescue centre located in the north of the parish close to the M69. This is Leicester Animal Aid. It's a registered charity whose origins date back almost 70 years. The organisation was founded by one remarkable woman called Dorothy Farndon. In the 1950s, when it was the norm for most married women to stay at home, Dorothy bought stray dogs from the local police station to prevent them from being destroyed. Some of the rescued dogs were kept in her own home in Saffron Lane in South Wigston. Others found homes with members of her family and friends. Word soon spread that Dorothy could be relied upon to look after unwanted cats and dogs, and by 1959, some 300 dogs had been rescued by her. Her back garden had chalets to house stray cats until they too could be rehomed. In 1962, Dorothy had a total of 47 feline friends living at her property. Dorothy was affectionately known as the Florence Nightingale of pets and soon built a team of loyal and hard-working volunteers. Since then, a lot has changed. Leicester Animal Aid now has 4.5 acres to call its own, and at any one time it can have up to 70 animals on site. Its first premises were at Thurmaston Lane, but they moved operations to Huncote in 1970. This site cost £7,500 plus a further £2,500 for alterations. In 2022 they added a new cat sanctuary named the Perfect Palace, thanks to a grant from the Pets at Home Foundation and a donation from a local family. Let's head into Huncote now and see what the village has for us. From LAA's premises we have to pass over the M69 and then past a biofuel site before the village comes into view. Okay then, here we are in Huncote village, and this one is a tale of two distinct areas. You've got the old section, which is to the south of the village, and then this northern section where I'm standing right now is a sea of new build properties which have come along in the last 40 or 50 years, I would hazard a guess. We're going to start off by walking through this lot along Spence Lane. Let's go. We start our walk on Spence Lane in the northernmost part of Huncote. It's not all that long ago that this area was just a patch of green fields. OS maps from the year 1900 show a small cluster of properties to the south of the village, whilst everything else was pretty much just countryside. Whilst Huncote still possesses a lot of countryside today, the continued expansion of the village in areas like this have made it quite the substantial little place, with an ever-shrinking green fringe. Small parks have been placed here and there to maintain a modicum of balance. This one here with a pond and a playground is a good example. Huncote is by no means a village that's experienced massive growth in response to housing demand, but there are areas that have sprung up in recent times. This is one of them. The main population growth in the village came between the 1950s and the 1970s, bulking out the village to the north and east. Our first real landmark is Huncote Community Primary School. This was built in the 1960s and has served the village ever since. The history of education in this village goes back a little further though. In 1852 there were two schools in Huncote, but they were both held in the same building. One was a Sunday school and the other was a national school. The building in question still stands today. It's on Brook Street in the older part of the village to the south. Attendance at Huncote was frequently poor. Many of the boys in particular seemed to put work before lessons as they grew older and nearer to leaving school. A lot unofficially left in their teens. The old school is now a private house, quite literally a world away from what this place is today. Now I wonder how many of the children who are currently attending Huncote Community Primary School have aspirations of an acting career. Well, one man from Huncote did so a few years ago. This next area is more of the same, a vast clump of 20th century housing. We're on Denman Road here, which will take us to the Village Green and Narborough Road. There's not a lot to talk about in this area, so to fill the time, let's talk a bit about Huncote's most famous former resident. His name is Richard Armitage. An actor and an author, Armitage received recognition in the UK with his first leading role as John Thornton in the TV programme North and South, which aired in 2004. However, it was his role as Dwarf King and leader Thorin Oakenshield in Peter Jackson's film trilogy adaptation of The Hobbit that made him an international household name. His other notable roles include John Proctor in Yale Farber's stage production of The Crucible, Francis Dolarhyde in the American TV series Hannibal, and Guy of Gisborne in Robin Hood. He also voiced Trevor Belmont in the Netflix adaptation of Castlevania, and in 2020 he played the lead role in the Netflix miniseries The Stranger. Busy boy, right? The funny thing is, acting was not something in his blood. He was the son of a secretary and an engineer. Although he was born in Leicester, he grew up here in Huncote. He attended Huncote School before being educated further at Brockington College in Enderby. It was there he followed an interest in music. He would then transfer at the age of 14 to Pattison College in Coventry, which is an independent school specialising in the performing arts. That was so he could focus on drama and dance. One of Richard Armitage's trademarks is his baritone voice, which he's employed as a voice actor since 2006. Whilst working on Robin Hood, he was asked to record audiobooks for the first season of that series. He's also had a lot of success as a TV and advert narrator. In 2022, he ventured into video games for the first time, providing the voice of the Daemon Prince Balaka in Total War Warhammer 3. I have to wonder, would he ever consider voicing a few YouTube videos made by a mad guy trying to visit every civil parish in England? Hey, come on, a man can dream. So here's the green. It's not much to write home about, but it does help to break up the housing for a moment. The next area is, again, yet more housing. So the village sign you can see there was erected in the year 2000 to celebrate the millennium. Huncote's got a special symbol. If you have a look above the word Huncote there, you can see there's like an oval shaped thing, and that has a pig on it, because pigs are associated with this place. We'll discover why later. This is Ratcliffe Drive, which we're going to follow towards St James's Close. Once there, we'll have a look at the church. Here's a bit of general history about Huncote whilst we traverse this section. The origins of the village are a bit obscure. There is some historical evidence to suggest that it began life as a daughter settlement of a larger Saxon village. The chances are that village was its neighbour, Stony Stanton. Not much is known about it during medieval times, but in the 18th century things really started to take off industrially. Huncote was a domestic framework knitters village. It didn't last long though. It was soon replaced in Victorian times by quarrying, which helped to improve local transport systems by providing better roadways. As you can imagine, the roads in the village were in tip-top shape. The population back then was just over 500, and the village could be defined by an area bounded by Main Street, Churchback Lane and Thurleston Brook. Modern day Huncote has a population of around 2,300. With growth came the need for more facilities, and it wasn't long before a church was erected. The thing is, it was never finished. This is St James's Church. It was dedicated in 1898, but it was never fully completed. Let's tell the story of how this church ended up only partially built. Ecclesiastically, Huncote used to be in the same parish as its bigger neighbour, Narborough, and for many years it had no church of its own. Instead, it relied on Narborough for theirs. That said, there was an ancient chapel dedicated to St James that used to serve the small populace here. It had fallen into disuse by 1622 and was reported to be in ruins. The present church is approximately 50 metres to the northwest of where the ruined chapel was. It's now been built over by the housing we've just seen. St James's Church was built as a replacement, even though it would take almost 300 years to begin. The time lapse was for the same reason it was never finished: a lack of funds. This peculiar building has no tower. It consists only of a nave and a chancel and a vestry on the northern side. It still has a pleasant interior with plenty of light from the many windows. There are no pews here. Instead, there are wooden chairs, and the inside is well cared for with some nice features. Huncote's church is well worth a visit, even if it is just to see its interesting unfinished state and the lost tower that was never completed. So opposite the unfinished church, we've got what seems to be like a little memorial garden. There's a silhouette of a soldier just there with some poppies at his feet and one on his cap as well. And as well as him, we've also got this. Some poppies underneath this, what appears to be a Spitfire. Using Duncan Avenue now, we're heading north again, and this will take us towards and past a new build street called Quarry View Close. The name of the street could be a reference to more than one quarry actually. On the 1900 OS map, there are 3 quarries located in the general vicinity of Huncote. 2 of them were Huncote Quarry and Croft Quarry, which would merge together in the 1970s. We'll see the result of that merge tomorrow. The other one was a small-scale affair located to the east of the village off the Narborough Road. Today, that one's occupied by a landfill site, so the chances are Quarry View refers to Croft. Now we're on the playing field, and here in Huncote, this is another King George field. It's managed by a charity set up by Huncote Parish Council. It's been here since January 1938. This is, without a doubt, the best green space the village has. It's huge and features a playground and loads of interconnecting footpaths to other areas of the village. Now for a walk down Forest Road. It's a gentle downhill amble which will take us to the centre of the village and to the main shops and amenities. Again, it's mostly residential, but the further downhill you go here, the more the housing type begins to change. At first, it's pretty modern, with a collection of 20th century detached and semi-detached properties, but soon the residences become red brick terraces, clearly Victorian or Edwardian in origin. That's because Huncote is a great example of a village that started within a small cluster and expanded outwards, and Forest Road was the first street to gain newer houses. And of course the name Forest Road is a reference to Leicester Forest, which we learned about on Monday. Now towards the end of Forest Road we're starting to come to the business end of Huncote. This is where all the main sort of stuff is located, all in a tiny concentrated area. Let's go check it all out. Almost at the end we come to a large chapel. This is linked to the primitive Methodists, who have been around in Huncote since at least 1874. In that year they built their first chapel on Cheney End. 33 years later, they built a new one, and that's the one on your screens right now. It cost £1,050 to construct and was designed to seat 220 people. It's still in use today. The original chapel was to become the registered office of Velos Spares, used to store parts for classic motorcycles. After the chapel, the road splits into two parts. If you take the left-hand fork, you'll come to one of the village's shops. Today it's called Huncote News, but it used to be called Video Box at one time. The main row of shops is in the other direction. Let's head that way next as the road starts to fall gently downhill into the valley of the Thurleston Brook. This building is Alexandra House. It's a family-run, top-quality residential care home for the elderly, and that's about all I found out about it. So the centre of Huncote is kind of like a crossroads. You've got Forest Road up there, and in the other direction you've got Brook Street, and that is where the school is, the old school, which we mentioned earlier. Now also on this corner, I'm just going to move out of the way of this car, this house here, which is kind of between the two bits of Forest Road, that used to be the old post office, and that has now moved into the other shop, which we'll see in a moment. Next to Alexandra House is a small walled area which features a flagpole. We know what this is, don't we? It's a pinfold. There's no need to explain what it was for because we see loads of them everywhere, but I can tell you the story behind how this one came to look as you see it now. Although it's been well over a century since this held any animals, the site of the Pinfold at Huncote has always been a favourite spot on Main Street. In 1973, a garden was opened here and a plaque was set onto an old granite mounting block, which had stood for years near the Red Lion Inn. It stood here for more than 30 years until Huncote Parish Council refurbished the garden in 2008. New stone was provided by Croft Quarry. Local craftsmen built it as a dry stone wall. A ceremony was then held to mark the reopening of the Pinfold when it was finished. Children from the primary school cut the ribbon to reopen it. Now, this little spot can be used by any member of the village as a place of rest and relaxation. It's a meeting place, or somewhere to chat if you will. Within the site is something called a tethering ring, kindly donated by a Mr. Davy who found it in his garden elsewhere in Huncote. Tethering rings were used to tie up animals in a pinfold. Also within this is a statue. It's called the Pig on the Wall, and it was added to the Pinfold in June 2020. It recognises the village's connection with pigs, but also the village motif. There are two possible origins of the Pig on the Wall. One says that a pig in a local farm used to follow all funeral processions to the cemetery, whilst the other says it's a spin on a traditional tale. Okay, so now we have the main area of shops. It's a neat little row which consists of a hairdresser's, a takeaway, a fish and chip shop and a spa store. On the other side of the road is Main Street Garage. Okay, let's talk pubs next. Huncote only has one these days, and it's the building right behind me. There used to be two though. Huncote can only boast one pub these days. There used to be two, but the Barley Sheaf was demolished in the 1930s, leaving the place with just the Red Lion. As far as pub histories go here, we can go right back to 1752. In those days, there were two public houses, but their names are not known. Even so, experts reckon one was called the Birch Tree. Whatever it was called, it would change its name to the Red Lion, and that's the one that stands here right now. The other was listed from 1752 to 1781, although it may have existed well before that. There's no mention of it after 1781, and from then on there was just the one public house. The Barley Sheaf never originated as a fully fledged pub. It was instead a beer house, and later it turned into a pub, once again giving Huncote a second. Right, now the next thing to do is head up Cheney End. It's a narrow lane that's a dead end, but it becomes a footpath. There are two things we need to talk about up there, and they both pertain to chapels. One of them we can see, but the other is buried under some new houses. In February 1990, Hassel Homes were in the village, beginning a housing development off Cheney End. All was going to plan until they discovered some human bones. When the bones were analysed, they were thought to date back to the 12th century. The company then delayed building work to enable archaeologists to excavate the site. They discovered a large medieval building with granite foundations, pieces of glass and wall plaster, and there were yet more fragments of bone. It should be noted that the chapel was not the one that St James's Church replaced. Now built over, it provided the name of the street that sits on it, Chantry Close. Okay, at the end of Cheney End, it's a dead end. But before we reach said dead end, there's another building to check out. You remember earlier we saw the Methodist Chapel? Well, this here is the building that preceded it. There it is. Let's see what this is all about, shall we? So this is Huncote's original primitive Methodist Chapel, which was built in 1874. This is the one that was replaced by the other building we saw earlier. It's an about turn here as we make for a footpath that will lead us past the allotments. That'll keep the fans happy. If you're new around here, finding the allotments is a running joke. Now our route starts to make for a sports themed area. Huncote, as we know from yesterday's episode, has plenty of sporting facilities, although a lot of them are over the Thurlaston border. Huncote also has a running club called Huncote Harriers and a BMX club called the Huncote Hornets. The latter's home track opened in 2015 and it's considered to be one of the top tracks in the country. So this is Huncote Leisure Centre, which also adds to the sporting facilities, although currently it only opens in the evenings. This was built in the 1980s on land that previously served as a landfill site. After being sealed and capped in 1973, it faced challenges in managing methane gas extraction. The issues with methane led to temporary closures of the leisure centre after it was built, and even as late as 2021, there were still issues. I guess that's the problem with building on a landfill. In 2021, the centre was closed for quite a while due to elevated gas levels, but has since reopened after new safety measures were implemented. The centre itself has a variety of facilities, including sports halls, squash courts and a gym, and it's all been upgraded since it was first built. It's a great asset to the modern Huncote village. Our final stop is the cemetery, which opened in 1897. Prior to its opening, many Huncote residents were buried in Narborough's parish churchyard. That's because, as we know, St James's Church was never completed and thus never had an actual churchyard. The cemetery is now managed by Huncote Parish Council. And I've decided to take a little perch on this bench, which you can find at the edge of the cemetery here. Just take the weight off my feet for 5 minutes. That's it. That's our walk around Huncote village. There's one more thing to talk about though. You may have noticed when we were walking down towards the Red Lion, that there's a very steep hill there. That's running down into the valley of the Thurleston Brook, which is the watercourse that Huncote sits on. And on that brook, there was a mill. So let's drive away from Huncote now, and as we do, we'll pass over Huncote Bridge. That spans the watercourse which the village was founded upon, Thurleston Brook. The brook was a key landmark for Huncote. Before framework knitting and quarrying took over, there was milling, and there's been a watermill here since at least the time of Doomsday. There's no record of the names of any Huncote millers until 1833. The first one to appear is Charles Payne, and 1833 was the year he died. He owned the old watermill that stood on Thurleston Brook. Following him, it was owned and run by John Hobill. John's son worked with him until 1875, but from 1876 he took over the running of the mill himself until shortly after 1900, when it ceased working. The mill itself has now been demolished, but the mill house and some of the outbuildings remain as private residences off the road to Croft. That's that for Huncote. The next parish we're off to is Huncote's southern neighbour, and the boundary between the two features a quite magnificent hill. Tomorrow we'll start our journey around that village by climbing that hill and having a look at the view you can see from the top. Spoiler alert, it's quite incredible. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.